Right, I'll probably try to kick things off. I think my computer has literally just kind of got back to being normal again. Sorry for the massive delay. So ignore probably the first 5 to 10 minutes of this. But yeah, I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just get into the kind of the slides and the discussion points, and people who are watching back on the replay can obviously listen back to what I was saying and things. So I think let's just get into it. So this is the team at the moment, no change from that team selection video I put out on Tuesday. Obviously I did the early move of Luke Shaw to Rudiger. Now I don't think that was in hindsight the best thing to do because it looks like Shaw could be out, but then obviously this news about Trent Alexander-Arnold being out is a bit of a bummer. And so he's red flagged. Obviously he's not pictured here with the red flag, but he's looking very unlikely to play this week against Man City. So he's probably going to be out for I think up to 3 weeks is the kind of thing that I've heard or seen on social media. So if it's 3 weeks, given that there's going to be the international break, he's probably going to be hopefully back for Watford. There is definitely a case though, if he's not back for Watford, that you could probably sell and not get him back for a few weeks, because the draw for Liverpool is not fantastic. They've got obviously Man City, Watford is pretty decent. Obviously not Man City, but Watford is good. But if he misses that, then it's Manchester United, Brighton, then I believe it's Arsenal. So the games are a little bit tough. So you could probably avoid, holding Alexander-Arnold. But so I think for me, I've already used my free transfer, so I've got no more free transfers left. And I think if Ayling is fit, I could easily play Ayling instead of Trent and not take a hit. But given that so many people are wildcarding this game week, and I think Chelsea defense is obviously going to be a really big kind of area that a lot of people are going to target. I think I really want to go maybe potentially on double Chelsea defense. So I think I might actually take a -4 and end up doing Trent to either like an Alonso or an Azpilicueta. Obviously Alonso played like 45 minutes in the Champions League, he got a yellow card, and then Chilwell played the second 45 minutes. So I think people are a little bit unsure about whether Alonso is going to start. I think he would start. I'm just not sure, well, actually, if he starts, he'll probably play the full 90. But it's an easier game against Southampton, so you could argue that Chilwell could, make the start for that game just to get some bit more minutes into his legs. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I'll go with Alonso, but we'll have to wait for press conferences as well. But I think if Ayling is past fit, then I probably will. To be honest, if Ayling is past fit, I probably still won't play him. I think I will eventually do the Trent to a Chelsea defender, because I'm planning to wildcard next game week. I can easily bring him back on the wildcard. So I think that's probably going to be the plan for the team. Still got captaincy on Ronaldo. I don't see any other real better options in my team at the moment. I mean, I could go with Antonio. I have briefly thought about captaining Chris Wood as well. I mean, it's Norwich at home. That would be a super differential, but at the moment, sticking with Ronaldo. I could obviously move to Lukaku if I wanted, but I think Ronaldo is good enough for a captaincy for this game week as well. So that's how the team's going to look. I'll post my final team on Twitter as well, but likely it's going to be Trent out for a Chelsea defender. Probably either going to be Azpilicueta or Alonso. Depends on how risk averse I'm feeling come Saturday deadline. So I think the first thing I wanted to get into though with the whole kind of wildcard discussion is just looking at the fixtures. Also, let me know if you guys can't see the things that I'm showing yet on the slides, because on my end it looks like there's a bit of a delay, but this was happening last time, and a few of you said that you could all still see what I was showing. So basically you can see that Chelsea's at the top of the fixture list. You've got Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, Leicester, United, Watford. Like those next 7 games for Chelsea are amazing. So I think obviously you're going to be targeting Chelsea. I think if you're going to go triple up on Chelsea, Lukaku's obvious, and then I think I would go double defense, because I'm not too hot on their midfielders. Like Mason Mount and Havertz were probably the only 2 I would consider. Neither of them have been excellent or that good so far. Bit of a rotation and injury concern for like Mount as well. So I would definitely be looking to just go double defense for Chelsea, excuse me. Now, other few other good teams there, you've got Wolves and Leeds. I think Wolves, looking at those fixtures, they look better for like an attacker. So say like a Jimenez, but not necessarily, I think, for like a defender. Because you've got Aston Villa and Leeds are both away. Everton, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Norwich, Burnley. Like West Ham, Crystal Palace, I think are pretty decent attacks. And so I wouldn't really be jumping in too much, I think, on the defenders from Wolves, but I really like some of the attackers, and I think I'd probably only, to be honest, go for Jimenez if you're looking for a wildcard pick and that kind of, that 7.5, 8 mil bracket of a striker. Leeds, obviously, I think Rafinha's standout option from Leeds at 6.5 mil. Norwich, not too much. I'm not looking too many players from Norwich. Spurs is interesting because they obviously have not been very good the last few games, but if I were to get anyone, I'd get Son. I think he'll continue to tick along even if the team themselves are not doing well, because he's just that good. He can create a chance for himself and still chip in with assists and goals even if the team itself is not doing that good. And you've got pretty decent games there, like you've got Newcastle in game week 8 especially. I think game week 12 was actually a good time to target them potentially. You've got Brentford. Sorry, I've lost my place. You got Leeds, Burnley, and then Brentford. So not a bad 3-game run. But I think what I wanted to show from this fixtures is mainly like some of the teams that you want to be jumping off. I think Manchester United is obviously a big one. I know there's an argument to hold Ronaldo through this period, but after Everton, Leicester's okay fixture as well. I think Leicester haven't been the best defensively. Then you've got Liverpool, Tottenham, Man City. You're not going to captain him in any of those when you've got Lukaku versus Norwich and Newcastle, and then Burnley, and then you've still got like Salah. You've still got some decent games against like Brighton and West Ham. So I think for me personally, on a wildcard, I wouldn't have Ronaldo. I wouldn't have any Manchester United players, to be honest. Watford is an interesting one as well, because obviously a lot of managers are jumping on Sarr. Luckily enough, I was able to get on him before he got his kind of brace against Norwich, and then that goal against Newcastle as well. Still got a good matchup this week in Leeds, but then after that, I don't know if I'd be looking to bring him in anytime soon with Liverpool, Everton, Southampton and Arsenal in the next 4 after that. So I think if I was actually making a wildcard draft, I don't think Sarr would actually be on it. I think there are going to be better options at that price point, like the Arsenal players. Like you can see, Arsenal have got a pretty decent run of fixtures. Brighton, Crystal Palace, Villa, Leicester, Watford, Liverpool, Newcastle. Good thing with Arsenal is actually that their better matches are at home. So that does obviously favour, I think with fans back, playing at home is obviously going to benefit. So, they've got easier games. Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Watford and Newcastle are all at home. So you can get like a Saka for a similar price to a Sarr, or you could go a little bit cheaper with the Smith Rowe. And I think they're still going to be pretty good options. But overall, yeah, that's just the fixtures. I think what I really wanted to get more into was the players. From there, we can then kind of refer back to this as well if we're looking to discuss, any specific players as well. So starting off with the goalies, again, let me know if you can see what's coming up. Otherwise, I'm sure it'll come up on your end as well. What I've done here is actually sorted. We'll go through some stats here and we'll do this for all the positions as well. So not just goalies, but we'll do it for the defenders and midfielders and forwards. So there's a few teams I think you probably want to be picking a goalkeeper out of on your wild card. Personally, I don't think I'd actually stick with Sanchez, just because Brighton defensively, their numbers are still okay, but he's just not going to give you anything apart from a 2 and a 6. I kind of joke about it in my team selection videos, but honestly, he doesn't give you anything but a 2 and a 6. And I think there are going to be goalies similar price who at least can chip in with some extra saves, maybe some extra bonus points as well, and maybe at the same rate of clean sheets. So I think there are just a few better options, and especially at that 4.5 mil. So what I've done in this table is I've sorted it by expected points for the goalies per appearance. Ederson comes out on top, which you'd expect, because Manchester City's defensive numbers are just absolutely ridiculous. If you take a look at them, he's not going to make many saves. You can see there the first column SV is referring to saves per 90. Every other goalie on this list has got a minimum of 2, and he's on 0.83. So he's averaging less than a save per match. So really, he's not going to get you those save points. With Ederson, it's all about clean sheets. He's very expensive though, 6.0 mil. And if you look at the third column as well, which is baseline bonus points. Now this is going to be useful if you're looking to get bonus points, obviously, from your goalies. Again, because he doesn't make many saves, and a lot of the defenders of City do a lot of the passing, which makes them better options for getting bonus points. Ederson's not going to do well on bonus. And so, 11.33 baseline BPS compared to some of these other guys who are like 15 plus. And then if you look, just to highlight Manchester City's, good defensive stats, you can see the last 3 columns are kind of good good figures to kind of get that idea. So OT is shots on target. Again, only faces 0.83 shots on target per 90. I think they've only conceded 5 shots on target in the first 6 games. It's some ridiculous number like that. Only 0.33 big chances per 90, so it's like one in every 3 games they'll give up a big chance. And then expected goals conceded 0.36. So it's all about clean sheets for Edison. I think the best options I would go for if I wasn't going to go for Sanchez would be Ramsdale and Raya. So Ramsdale obviously 4.5 mil for Arsenal. As we saw just previously, Arsenal's fixtures are not that bad for the next few weeks, and I think when you're looking on a wild card, you're not looking to change a goalie that much. So I think you want a goalie who's got good long-term fixtures, basically. So I think Ramsdale does definitely fit that bill. 2.33 saves per 90 is pretty good. He's ranked second, obviously, on the expected points, but he's only played a couple of games, so obviously you have to take that into consideration. Does well on bonus, actually, 14.67 baseline BPS. Not too bad. And Arsenal's defensive statistics, since Ramsdale has been playing, has also been very good. 0.8 expected goals conceded per 90, and 0.67 big chances conceded per 90. So I think overall those stats are actually pretty good for Ramsdale, and I think he's got some decent shot stopping ability, so I think he has got that ability to make saves, and so I think he could be a good option on wildcard, and probably would be the one that I would favour, I think. So Morgan, welcome in the chat, who's asked, would you consider rotating goalkeepers on a wildcard? It's a bit of a personal preference. I've never had success rotating goalkeepers, because I inevitably will always pick the one who ends up not getting the clean sheet, and the one on my bench will probably get the clean sheet or some save points. So I normally keep my goalkeepers very cheap. I have one 4.0 and one 4.5. So the best 4.0 is like Ben Foster from Watford, because he's playing at the moment. And then I would go for a 4.5 like a Ramsdale. There's a few other good 4.5s like Guaita from Crystal Palace. He's actually got very good shot stopping, he does concede a lot of shots, so he makes more saves, which is good for the goalkeeper, because every 3 saves will obviously get an extra point. You can see 3.17 saves per 90. The only 2 better than him is Mendy and Schmeichel. So his expected points are pretty good for Guaita. If we actually go back quickly to the Crystal Palace fixtures, they're not too bad either. It's a very up and down draw. You've got Leicester, Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City. So 2 out of those 4 I would say are good. And then after that, it's Wolves, Burnley, Villa and Leeds. So there's a few of those teams there that I think are pretty good attacks. So I'm not sure how many clean sheets Crystal Palace would get, but they definitely would be able to concede a lot of shots. So I think someone like Guaita could benefit there. And I think Raya actually is someone I've been highly considering as well if I was to go for a goalkeeper on wildcard, because he's got similar saves to Ramsdale. His expected points is a little bit lower than Ramsdale, but he's good on the bonus, 15.17 baseline BPS. That is something that I do like, that he has got better potential to get bonus. Obviously we know he's a very good shot stopper. If anyone didn't see his save against it was Jota in the Liverpool game, it was a ridiculous save. Could be an early season contender for save of the year. So he's a great shot stopper, and concedes quite a few shots on target, 3.17, although quite a few of these other goalies are better than that as well. So Raya is also someone to consider, but I think if you're going for any 4.5, I think I'd go for Ramsdale. So I think next we'll probably move on to defenders. So I think when I'm looking at defenders, you obviously want to look at the team and see that the team's got good defensive stats. And so, as I mentioned, Man City and Chelsea, probably the 2 standouts. And you can see here, this is top 10 defenders per 90 minutes based on points so far. Laporte is actually on top because he's actually got very good goal threat. And he's actually had quite a few shots on target, to my knowledge as well. But you can see there, Laporte, Cancelo, Trent, Diaz, Alonso, that's all got that Manchester City and, Chelsea flavour along with Trent Alexander-Arnold, because he's just an amazing attacker. Funnily enough, Pinnock is there. I think he might have had a goal from memory, but Brentford have had pretty decent defensive statistics, so not completely surprised to see him there. Obviously got Van Dijk, Gabriel from Arsenal, Rudiger from Chelsea, very, very popular pick on Wildcard. And you got Tyrone Mings actually. Now Mings is a bit of an interesting one. I've got Aston Villa listed there because they've actually got not too bad a run of fixtures after the next couple of weeks. And I think defensively, they're playing 3 at the back. And so they're looking pretty solid. Actually, they kept a clean sheet against Manchester United as well. I wouldn't personally go for Mings, but I think the fact that he was on this list was pretty telling, because they've had pretty good defensive stats in the last couple of weeks. I think I'd prefer to go for their wing backs though, like Matty Cash or Matt Target. Cash I think is 5 mil. I think in Mings is also 5 mil. And I think Target has dropped down to like 4.8. But I think this basically just gives you a good idea that City and Chelsea are the defenders. Are the teams that you want to be targeting defenders from. I think Cancelo is probably a really obvious pick from a City point of view. Last season the talk was always about that he's a bit of a rotation risk. Personally, I don't think he's that much of a risk anymore. Obviously Mendy is having his issues. Apparently Zinchenko's actually been a bit injured, and so Cancelo's got that versatility as well. He can play on the left and he can play on the right, and so I think Cancelo is pretty secure in my opinion and is performing pretty well. And I think the way that Pep rotates is typically based a lot on performance. If he sees a player's not performing, then he'll probably drop him out of the team. But at the moment, the position is Cancelo's. You can see expected goal involvement per 9 minutes is 0.2. Pretty solid. Trent is way above everyone else at 0.6. But he's just really good on the bonus as well, Cancelo. You can see 15.5. The only 2 other players who are better than that is Trent and Diaz. And so Diaz is also a very good consideration for a City defender. If I had to pick one though, I would probably pick Cancelo. But I think Diaz is obviously completely nailed on to the City defense. And so I think Diaz is probably someone, if you're really risk averse and very conservative, I think you could very easily just, lock in Diaz 6 mil into your defense. And that's basically 6 points plus any bonus potentially for a long time, because City defense is so good and their fixtures are also starting to turn, which is one reason why I wanted to get into a Game Week 8 wildcard so I could target a few of the City players. So if I had to pick, I think Laporte, to be honest, is going a little bit under the radar. Obviously Cancelo and Diaz, I just said, are probably the 2 best options to go for from City. But Laporte is going under the radar. I guess the only problem with him is that, potentially with John Stones, he could be a risk longer term. But I think while Laporte's playing, he's a very good option, because his goal threat is pretty good from set pieces. And so, I think he always will give you, also has some attacking upside as well. So Morgan's actually just come back in the question, with another question in the chat, saying, is it worth doubling up on the Arsenal defence for the fixture run? I don't think I would double up on Arsenal defence, to be honest. I think our defence is improving, but I would only go with one, because I think there are going to be, whenever I double on the defence, I want that defence to basically be top 3. The only teams I would consider having a double defence of is City and Chelsea, maybe Liverpool. If say Liverpool have an amazing run of fixtures, and then you can go with maybe a Trent and a Robertson. Aside from that, I don't normally do a defensive double up. I don't think Arsenal defence is that good. Obviously it helps that we've played a bit easier teams like Burnley and Norwich in the past couple of weeks. See, we conceded to Spurs as well, even though Spurs weren't that great in attack. So I think I would just go with one defender. I'd personally probably just go with Ramsdale just for the just to keep it cheap, 4.5 million at the back. You could go with Tierney with some attacking upside. He's just very injury prone, which is a bit of a problem, because if you're locking a defender longer term, he could obviously get injured, but obviously I wouldn't completely make that stop you from buying him, because if he gets injured, just trade him out, right? But yeah, doubling up, I think I'd only go with City or Chelsea, and maybe Liverpool as well. So yeah, I think for a wild card, obviously the big talk is about, your big at the back 4 defenders. I think, Rudiger, I think for a very safe Chelsea pick, I think you could go with Rudiger. He's very similar to Diaz for City. And then for the upside, you go with an Alonso and a Cancelo. And then Trent, obviously with this injury, if you have not played your wildcard yet, so say same as me, I think there's a good argument to take out Trent and then just wildcard him back in whenever he's fit. Otherwise, when you take him out, just leave enough money in the bank as well that you can easily bring him back. I think that's just the way I'd play it, because he's a lot of money, 7.5 million for a defender. You could just, make use of the funds. You could go forward the back with Cancelo, Diaz, Alonso, Rudiger, and then keep 1.5 million in the bank. And whoever of those 4, say if Alonso suddenly loses his place, just replace him with Trent. So I think next we'll go on to midfielders. So hopefully this one is a bit visible. There's a few more names that we had to look at here, so the text is going to be a little bit smaller, but I think midfield is a bit of an interesting one, definitely. So let me know whenever you guys can see that. Actually, I'll quickly get to this question from Cody. So he says, what do you think about Sarr? I'm guessing that's Jose Sarr, the Wolves goalie. I think he's really good. I'll quickly flick back to the goalkeepers here. So just let me know whenever you can see it. I think it's a bit of a personal thing where I don't normally spend more than 4.5 mil for a goalie. I normally would always go, I normally keep it pretty cheap and go 4.5. There was an exception towards the back end of last season when I went with Mendy, because Chelsea had an amazing run of fixtures, and I think at that point, I think team value was quite high. I think a lot of people had the money to play around with a more expensive goalkeeper. Sarr, obviously, he got an assist, and he actually created 2 big chances in that game against Southampton, so he got a mega haul. I wouldn't be expecting that, obviously, every week. One thing I actually do like about Sarr is Wolves, I think, obviously, they're really good on the underlying stats with the XG and things, but I don't see them being a team that's going to score a lot of goals. Like, I could see them scoring maybe 1, 2 at max. That usually benefits the goalkeepers, because obviously, the less goals that are being scored, the better potential that when that team gets a clean sheet, that goalkeeper's likely to get bonus, and he does concede quite a few shots and does make quite a few saves. And so your baseline BPS, you can see there, it's pretty high. There's only Mendy and it's Guaita and Mendy actually who rank above him, but he's third otherwise on baseline BPS. So he is pretty good on the bonus point system. So I think Sarr is good. Wolves fixtures are pretty decent up until about game week 14. So I think if you're on a wildcard and you've got that budget that you can extend to, a 5 mil goalkeeper, I think he's a good pick. I think at that price of 5 mil, I think he's probably the pick of the bunch. So yeah, long-winded answer, but I think he's a good option. I personally, though, would go for a 4.5 million goalkeeper. Alright, so let's maybe get back to the midfielders. Obviously, guys, feel free to ask questions at any time. I'm very flexible. You can just jump around and address them. It's completely up to you guys as well. It's a whole Q&A, but I thought I wanted to also go through a few stats and stuff just to give you guys potentially some tips and some things to think about, if you're building a wildcard, or, obviously this is all good for a wildcard, but this is just general. If you've already played your wildcard and you're just looking for players to bring in, obviously the players we're going to talk about are good picks, regardless of if you're on a wildcard or not. So looking at midfielders, Salah is just bossing the stats. Actually, all Liverpool players are just bossing the stats. So this table sorts all midfielders by expected points. And the top 3 is Salah, Mane and Jota. So pretty telling. That shows how good Liverpool attack's been. They also had a good start to the season in terms of fixtures. They had 4 pretty decent games of the 6. But their attack has been, absolutely on fire. So, I mean, I don't think there's much to talk about with Salah. I think for me, Salah is just a lock. And he could be in your team for the rest of the season, barring an injury. I think there could be Africa Cup of Nations issues down the line. But yeah, honestly, Salah, I think just don't even think about trying to play cute and not go with him. Obviously, this is going to be the toughest fixture he comes up against is Man City. But it's just the 1 week. Just leave him there for the rest of the season. He'll get you points. Could be the FPL GOAT. But I think it was really, really interesting that Jota is up there. So one thing I did want to get into as well with the midfielders. Also, I will show some wildcard drafts a bit later on as well. So I will show some drafts that I've made. I thought maybe I'll go through the players first, and then obviously that will lend itself to seeing what players we pick in the actual wildcard draft. So Jota is third. We know that Jota's stats are really, really good whenever he gets game time, but that's the problem. With Firmino back, and he scored a double in their Champions League fixture against Porto in 10 minutes or something like that. So I would expect Firmino to play and to start versus City, just maybe if obviously he's fully back to fitness. Just because I feel like in those bigger matches, Klopp's want to go for Salah, Mane, and Firmino, and so Jota obviously probably won't get the full 90 minutes. He doesn't get the full 90 minutes anyway. He normally plays around 60 to 70, but I think his stats are that good that if you're not in a wildcard and you still got him in your team, I think he's still a perfectly good hold because Liverpool's attack is the best in the league so far. So I think Jota at his price, 7.7 million, is incredible value. Sarr is really high up there, 36.4. Now with this, as we saw previously with the Watford fixtures after Leeds are not very good, honestly, long term. Sarr, obviously he's got that talisman He's definitely by far the best player from Watford to go for as an attacker. But I think with these tougher fixtures coming up, I think these points, I don't know if these expected points are going to continue for the next few weeks, basically. But, obviously the underlying stats are very good. 5 big chances ranks pretty highly. Only Salah, Mane and Jota have got more big chances than him. And that's also the equal with Gallagher. He's also good for the bonus, 40 baseline BPS, although there is quite a few midfielders actually higher than him. But yeah, so Salah ranks up really highly. I think he's been a great pick for the past few weeks. Obviously, I'm very lucky that I got him a few weeks ago. I was able to get his points. I don't think I would have him on a wildcard though, just because of those tougher fixtures. Fernandes is ranking really highly here, but as we saw, Manchester United are ranked bottom of the fixture ticker, and I think his price point is just too expensive. Excuse me. Although, I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, but basically it was reported that the way the whole penalty system works now at United is the manager decides before the game who's taking the penalties. And that's it. It's not discussed between the players. Ollie's just going to be like, all right, Bruno, you're taking penalties, or Ronaldo, you're taking penalties this game. So Fernandes is still on penalties to an extent, but I just don't think that's going to still make him worth it, because the way that Manchester United are playing now with Ronaldo just kind of hogs everything. His stats are incredible because he's taking all the shots and all the chances that previously might have gone to Fernandes. So obviously Fernandes, I don't think people are going to be going with Fernandes on a wild card. Benrahma ranks really highly here in the midfielders. I think he's also someone, West Ham's fixtures are not the best moving forward. He's looked like West Ham's attack is really good though, so I think even in slightly tougher matches they still can do well. The problem is I think there are slightly better options around his price that you could maybe go with on a wild card. So I really like Saka. I really like Rafinha. I think Rafinha is the standout 6.5 million midfielder to go for. Even slightly cheaper options, I wouldn't say necessarily are better, but I think, on a wild card when you're looking a little bit more long term, or if say you're trying to shift your budget around, someone like a Gallagher could be a really good consideration. Benrahma, I don't know if I'd actually keep on a wild card. Grealish is a really interesting one. So Grealish, obviously with City's a really nice run of games coming from game week 8, because I think they've got like Burnley, Brighton and Palace, and then they've got United, which is obviously a little bit tougher. Grealish is probably one of the most nailed on midfielders for City, apart from KDB, which is a good thing because normally, Pep Roulette, no one wants to play Pep Roulette. But he's done really well for City. He hasn't really translated to FPL points though, but 18 key passes, so that's the column next to the expected points there. He's got 18, only behind Fernandes. So he's doing really well on chance creation side of things, but it just hasn't really translated to FPL points. I think he's had one goal and I think 1 assist or 2 assists, so he's not done too much. But I just kind of like the fact, I'd be willing to take the bet on him on a wild card just because of the fixtures that City have, and I think he's got that really nice price point, I think of 8 mil. I think when you think about your wild card, you do want to be building it with price points in mind to keep yourself flexible, just in case there's any trends that occur that we might need to react to quickly. So we mentioned Jota previously, his stats are incredible. Save Grealish, you have that 8 million midfielder, and all of a sudden Liverpool get into a great run of fixtures. Say Firmino's being rested, or say he's got injured or something like that. Jota's going straight back in the starting lineup. You can pretty quickly react going straight from a Grealish to a Jota. Slightly different side of the view, perspective is say Son. We saw Spurs from around game week 12, I think it is, have a pretty decent 3 or 4 game stretch of fixtures. If you want to jump on a Son, it's going to be really hard going from a Saka or a Rafinha, Gallagher kind of price point up to a Son. You have to basically drop one of your heavy hitters. But if you've got a Grealish there at that 8 million price point, you only have to make up 2 million. And so if you have, say, 4 good defenders, you could drop a Diaz. 6 million maybe at the time, he's 6.5 million. You could drop him to a 4.5, and then you can make up the funds to go from a Grealish to a Son. Still, a 4.5 million defender is a good option to play, and then you can get up to a Son. So I really like that price point, and I think he's someone I'm definitely heavily considering on a wild card as well. Rafinha, as I mentioned, I think is a pretty standout 6.5 million. Zaha is, I've got him there as a kind of a potential pick. I think it's more of a Crystal Palace pick because I think Crystal Palace have been looking pretty good. They've got a few decent games coming up in the next kind of long-term stretch of games. You could obviously go for Gallagher, who's a lot cheaper. Probably overall does better on stats, I would say as well. given that he's like 5.7 mil and Zaha is 6.9. You know, they're right next to each other in terms of the expected points. Gallagher has got 3 extra big chances. He's got 2 more shots in the box. He's created 1 more chance as well. I think the thing with Zaha is that he's had 2 penalties. That definitely does inflate his stats quite a bit. And so on that basis, from like say open play threat, I would say Gallagher has got better stats. But Zaha can still obviously go on a bit of a stretch. He can be a bit of a troll kind of figure as well, because he tends to sometimes not do well against the easy teams, and then against good teams he can suddenly get you some points. So he can be a frustrating own, but I like the pair of them as good Crystal Palace picks. And then I think the 2 kind of last players I wanted to touch on, probably the Arsenal players, so like Saka and Smith Rowe. They don't feature on this table here, but it's really only because they've had probably the past 2 games where they've actually looked pretty good. And I probably would go with a Saka compared to a Sarr in that kind of, 6 million priced midfield bracket. And Smith Rowe, I think if you're looking to save a few extra funds, you could obviously go very easily for a Smith Rowe. Saka is going to be a little bit more nailed in my opinion, and Saka's stats are also basically better in every category compared to Smith Rowe. So I think if you've got the money, I would go for a Saka, but I think if you're looking for a budget option in your midfield that you can kind of rotate or keep as good depth, then Smith Rowe I think is a fine option. And finally, Mbeumo, hopefully I pronounced that right, from Brentford. So he's also one of those kind of 5.5 million midfielders. He's doing very well on the stats front. You can see there, 26.1 expected points to begin the season, and he's actually underperformed. He's on 19. If you watch him play, you can see that he can be a bit wasteful with his chances, but he's getting into good position. He's getting the shots. He's got a really good partnership with Tony as well, and so that definitely does help him, I think. And Brentford have got a really, really good a run of games coming up at some point. I'm just going to flick back quickly to the fixtures. Sorry. So if I have a quick look at them here, Brentford from game week 9 is when you probably want to start targeting some of their players. So you've got Leicester, Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle, Everton. That's a good 5-game run. And so I think Mbeumo, Tony, who we'll talk about just in a little bit, I think could be very good options to consider from Brentford. I think as from an attacking point of view, I would only really go for a Tony and an Mbeumo. So sorry, I'll just quickly get back to the midfielders there. So that's kind of the midfield picks, and I think hopefully it's a little bit helpful in terms of considering the price points and things. We'll just jump onto the forwards. After we talk about the forwards, I'll then show some wildcard drafts as well. Alright, so taking a look at the forwards, so basically Antonio I think is undroppable from your wildcard, to be honest, or in your team in general. His stats are just unbelievable. Yes, West Ham's games coming up are not too bad, but in my opinion Antonio is fixture proof. He can score against anyone. His stats are better than Ronaldo's, which is crazy. So I would definitely be keeping Antonio on your wildcard. You can see Ronaldo, Lukaku rank really highly as well on the forwards. I think I wouldn't be holding Ronaldo when you've got Lukaku with a much better run of games, and Ronaldo being so expensive. I think Ronaldo's stats are a lot better than Lukaku's, but we've seen United struggle in attack the past few games as well. And I think if you're not going to captain him when he's that expensive, I just don't see the value in holding on to him. So I would not go with Ronaldo on a wildcard, and I think I would go with Lukaku because he himself has got pretty good stats. And I think you're more likely to captain you're more likely to captain Lukaku compared to Ronaldo. Vardy is just really interesting. He always seems to start the season very well. We can see that he's expected to get 6 points per 90 for the first 6 games of the season so far. So he's ranking 4th behind only Antonio, Ronaldo and Lukaku. But his price point is just really awkward. 10.5 million. I just don't know if when you're looking to fit in Lukaku, Antonio, and then if you're looking to go with some more premium defenders, and maybe get a Grealish, it gets really hard to fit in a Vardy. And again, similar, I think at that 10.5 million price point, you maybe have to consider would you captain him? And I think if you actually look at the fixtures for the next few weeks, your captaincy basically goes Lukaku this week or Ronaldo, Salah game week 8, Lukaku game week 9, Lukaku game week 10. I think Lukaku maybe in game week 11, I want to say, or maybe it's Salah. Either way, I just don't think the fixtures are going to be there, or you're just going to choose to, captain Vardy compared to like a Lukaku or a Salah. So I personally don't think Vardy is worth the money, but if you can squeeze him in, obviously he could be a very good kind of differential on a wild card. St. Max has looked really, really good for Newcastle at the moment, but he's now gone up to like 6.8 million, and I would think I would probably lean with Tony. He's now, because he's down to 6.3, as we just spoke about, Brentford have got a good run of games from game week 9, and so Tony, he's on penalties, which is obviously a big factor to consider. He's just looking like an unreal player as well. I really, really like Tony as an option on wildcard, even though he's got a tough matchup against Chelsea in game week 8. If you can bench him, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Even, to be honest, you can easily play him against Chelsea. He just needs one penalty or something like that, and he'll be able to deliver the points. So Tony, I think I really like as a more budget kind of third striker, along with Antonio and Lukaku. I'm just going to assume Antonio Lukaku is on most people's radar for two of the striker spots. I think it really comes down to then your third one. So Bamford, it looks like, is actually going to be ruled out for a little bit longer. Could actually be a whole month, which I think is what initial reports potentially were suggesting. So I don't think he's going to be playing this week against Watford. For that reason, I think Watford's probably the kind of game that you wanted him for. So Bamford I wouldn't be considering on a wild card, given that he's injured. I think I really like Watkins and Jimenez as well. So as we saw before with Wolves, pretty good fixtures up until game week 14. And I think I prefer those fixtures from an attacking point of view. So I think Jimenez still is going to be really good. He's got his goal now, so you'd hopefully think maybe the confidence is back, because he also had very good underlying stats as well. So I think Jimenez could be a very good option if you're looking to get another kind of 7.5 million budget striker. Watkins is an interesting one because, sorry, I'm just going to have to quickly go back to the fixtures again. So Villa's next 3 are a little bit tough, but I think they do have a few decent games. And Watkins, like, I think he looked really good, especially against like Chelsea. So we can see here, I mean, Tottenham away. I mean, Tottenham are looking a bit of a shambles at the moment. You could say that's a good fixture. Wolves at home, I don't think it's bad. Arsenal away, maybe it's a little bit tough. Then you got West Ham at home, who haven't looked very good defensively. Southampton, Brighton, Crystal Palace. There's a few good games there for Aston Villa. I think if I had to choose between, say, Watkins and Ings, I think I would go for Watkins because I think his stats are just a little bit better than Danny Ings. So sorry, I'm just going flicking quite a bit, so apologies for that. But you can see here, I've sorted this as well per 90 because I think looking at totals, a few of these guys have been injured like Watkins and Bamford, but I thought this maybe gave a better idea actually. So yeah, Watkins, his stats are pretty good, 4.8 expected points per 90 minutes. He does actually very well, I believe, on the big chances. So big chances 0.5 per 90, so basically he gets one big chance every 2 games. So it's better than quite a few options, like it's better than Tony, it's better than St. Max, it's almost the same as Lukaku. It's the same as Chris Wood, my boy. If any of you know, from my team selection, I've currently got Chris Wood in the team as well, but he's home to Norwich, so it's a good fixture. So yeah, I think Watkins is a good consideration. I think the last one I think about from a striker point of view is probably Armstrong from Southampton. Now I was very keen on him, but I'm a little bit less so now, just because Southampton, I don't trust their attack that much. Yes, they've got some good fixtures, but it kind of also aligns at the same time with Tony. And I think if you had to make me choose between Armstrong and Tony, I think I'd be choosing Tony all day. Tony's on penalties. I think he's just looking a much better option. I think Brentford, attack-wise, probably going to be better than Southampton. Ward-Prowse would be on penalties for Southampton, not Armstrong, so that's something that you can also take into account. And I think on the stats front here, I think we can see that Tony, in my opinion, looks a little bit better. So I would probably lean with Tony over an Armstrong. Alright, that's all the players and different stats. So I think what I'll go through now is just a few different drafts. I think this is probably what most people want to see. They want to see the draft of the teams, etc., and give them some ideas. So I'll just get into that now. Alright, so this is one wildcard draft, and it's probably more of the typical template wildcard draft you're probably seeing on, like, say, Twitter and things like that. I really like it for a few reasons. So you can play it as a 4-4-2, but you can also kind of be a bit more flexible and play it a bit like a 4-3-3 as well. So at the back I've got Foster and Raya. I've got Raya in this draft just for kind of illustration purposes. That could obviously very easily be a Ramsdale. At the back, obviously, this was done before the whole Trent injury. So you've got Rudiger, Cancelo, Trent, and Alonso, and then Livramento on the bench there. Livramento is basically going to be in every draft because he's probably the best budget enabler defender to go for. The reason it's good to have him, because when you've got slightly riskier guys like Alonso and Cancelo, if they ever drop out, you can very easily have Livramento come on in their place. And also, if you are playing 4 at the back, you can have actually one of your midfielders or strikers come off from the bench as well. So this kind of gives good depth in that regard. So under this formation, you could play 4 at the back with Rudiger, Cancelo, Trent, and Alonso. In the midfield, I've gone with Smith Rowe, Rafinha, Salah, and Grealish. And then Josh Brownhill from Burnley is a 4.4 million midfielder who will play every game, give you 2 points a game. Not really much else though, but he's not fodder. Like, he will actually still play at least. So Smith Rowe, Smith Rowe is already in my team. And so I think he's just at 5.3. I think he's just super, super cheap. And I think he's a good entry into that Arsenal attack. You very easily could go for an Mbeumo instead. So if you had to free up a little bit of money, you could obviously drop Alonso, down to like a Christensen. You could drop Raya to Ramsdale. That opens up another 0.1. There's a few things you can do in the team to make that little extra money. And obviously this is based on my prices. It really depends on what, kind of prices your own team has as well in terms of team value. So that was the midfield, and then the strikers were Antonio, Lukaku, and Tony. So I probably made it pretty obvious in that forward section that I really like Tony as a pick. Antonio, Lukaku not going anywhere, and to be honest, in this draft, I think there's a few players that are going to be very common in the next 2 or 3 drafts I'm going to show as well. Foster, 4.0 goalkeeper, is going to be there because he's playing at the moment. Livramento is definitely going to be in every draft. In terms of the big hitters, Lukaku, Antonio, Salah, Rafinha, Cancelo, Trent, if he was fit, and Rudiger are basically in every draft. So there's only actually a few positions that I'd be thinking about as well if I'd be doing my own wildcard. But I really like this team because it gives you that flexibility in the midfield of Grealish, that price point. Say for example, if you wanted to jump on Son, that kind of hypothetical I gave a little bit earlier, I could just drop down, I don't know, maybe Cancelo. Say you can drop Cancelo to a 4 mil. I don't know, it's a big drop off, go down to like a Williams from Norwich, but then you can go Grealish up to Son, or you could drop like say, Tony to a 4.5 striker, and then you can go Grealish up. Yeah, obviously it doesn't sound ideal to do that, but it gives you that flexibility at least. And I think when you're going on your wild card, I think you could obviously go very cheap. You could go Gallagher instead of Grealish, and that gives you like 2.3 mil. That 2.3 mil, you can do a lot with that. You could upgrade Tony to like a Jimenez. You could upgrade Smith Rowe to Saka. You could upgrade, like Livramento to a slightly better budget enabler. You could even upgrade your goalkeeper to like a 5 mil to like a Jose Sá, like what Cody said earlier. So I think there's a few things that you can do in terms of, manipulating the squad. Obviously with Trent being injured, I would probably realistically though, I wouldn't have Trent. I would have Diaz instead most likely. And I would just keep that money just sitting there, just ready to go whenever he's come back. Because I think whenever Trent comes back, you probably want him in your team long term. So I thought that was the first wildcard draft. My own wildcard draft would be very, very similar to this one. The only thing I might potentially not have in my wildcard would be the goalkeeper. It could be Ramsdale instead of Raya. But honest, and Alonso undecided still. That could be Azpilicueta or it could be Diaz. But honestly, my wildcard draft would be very, very similar to this one as well. And I'm looking to wildcard in game week 8. And so don't be surprised if in a wildcard video mine looks very similar to this one. So I think we'll go into the next draft now as well. So what I've done with this draft, hopefully you guys can see this as well. I've taken a little bit of money out of defense and I've made this probably more of a typical kind of 3-4-3 that I think most people probably plays, and it's probably the most common formation. So I've still got Sanchez and Steele. Obviously Sanchez could very easily be Ramsdale. I think I just forgot to update it, sorry, in the screenshot. But your core 3 defenders is Trent, Rudiger, and Cancelo. Obviously forget Trent, could be Diaz for now with some extra money in the bank. But you've got that 3 premium defender structure. And those 3 defenders would be the ones that you just keep, for the long term. Cancelo, Rudiger, teams with excellent defensive stats, and then Trent is just, in a league of his own usually when it comes to attacking stats. And then you'd have pretty good bench cover in, Ben White and Livramento. So you could also get a more higher upside guy like like an Alonso instead of Rudiger, given that you've got good, you've got good defenders there. Ben White at 4.4 is very cheap. So, that's pretty, I think he's at a good price. So I can see actually someone's gone in the chat, Afandi, sorry if I mispronounced your name. What do you think about Arsenal defenders? I kind of spoke about this a little bit before. I think I really like Arsenal defenders. Morgan earlier asked if we would double up. Obviously, I understand if you had, in this particular draft, if you did have Ben White, I'm not sure I'd also have Ramsdale. I'd maybe instead go with like a Raya or like a Jose Sa instead. But I think Arsenal defenders are good because I think they're offering good value, 4.5 mil. Ramsdale, I think, is actually probably the best option to go for. But if you don't decide to go with him, you could obviously have like a Ben White. And I think he's perfect kind of first bench cover, or if any of your attackers have a bad matchup and Arsenal have a good one, you can very easily slot him in there. And he's not too bad on the bonus either, Ben White. So he can very easily get you those 7-point games as well, but he doesn't have any really attacking threat. But yeah, on the whole, I do like Arsenal defenders, and I think they've got good fixtures. And I think Arteta sets up Arsenal a bit more defensively, which again, good for defenders, because I don't see us as like a free-flowing, attacking team. Obviously, it worked against Spurs, but I think they tactically did not set up well against us. And so we were able to get 3 goals within like half an hour. But I would normally see Arsenal as like a 1 or 2-0 team. And so I think as a result, defenders are good for bonus. So that works for Ramsdale and Ben White. So yeah, I really like Arsenal defenders. Midfield is very similar to the previous draft. Well, it's actually the exact same midfield as the previous draft. Obviously, you can see I'm getting a bit of potentially some bias to like a Grealish. I don't think Grealish has done so much so far for FPL wise. I just like the price point. I just like getting a City attacker with their good fixtures coming up. I think if you can get any, if you can jump on a City attacker when others don't, and I think Grealish is looking pretty nailed. I think that's obviously, it's like a nice differential, if you want to call it that. And so what we've done in this draft, instead of having that extra premium defenders, we've put the money up front. So we've gone for Jimenez. So I think if you're a bit more of an attacking manager who likes a bit more money in your attack compared to your defense, you very easily could, take some money out of your defenders and go to Jimenez. Or alternatively, drop down Jimenez to a Tony like the last draft, and then use that extra mil, upgrade Smith Rowe to like a Saka. If you wanted Saka instead of Smith Rowe, very, very flexible again. So I think that's the one thing I'm probably going to say with my wildcard drafts, is that I think if you can keep it as flexible as possible, so you can react to as many different situations as possible, that's a good way to go about it. And this particular draft had 0.4 mil in the bank. So if you wanted to go to a Jose Sa, you only need to make another extra 0.1. Making 0.1 out of this, looking at it, actually is a little bit tough. Where would you make the 0.1 from? Let me know in the chat as well where you think you could do it. Maybe you don't go for Grealish. I don't know. Maybe you have like Jota instead, and that might make you have the funds. But yeah, so this is wildcard draft number 2, a bit more of a typical 3-4-3. Now, this next one is going to look very different to some people, and I don't think I would actually go with this myself, but I think some people potentially, if they like to go for an expensive goalkeeper, you could use this as an option. So I've got Edison in goal, 6 million Man City goalkeeper. Normally I don't like spending this much, but if you're looking for a nailed-on Man City player, Edison is the one to go for. It's like him and Diaz are basically locks in the Man City defense, and then you can lock in 6 points every week. Basically, we kind of went through goalkeepers early in the stream, so if anyone's joining in late, we went through goalkeepers. Basically, Edison doesn't make a lot of saves, doesn't get really high on the bonus, but his expectation of clean sheets is extremely high. Same defenders as the last draft as well. Midfield is slightly different, so we have actually dropped Grealish down to a Zaha. Kind of spoke about him before in the midfielders. He could be, a bit of a differential, or you could very easily go for a Gallagher instead. But yeah, so it's still got Jimenez up front as well. So a bit of a different kind of draft if you want to go really, really big in your goalkeeper and go with an Edison. But I think there's some common players being carried through here. The likes of Rudiger and Cancelo. I think, thematically it's more just like a Man City defender and a Chelsea defender as well. So yeah, also would let me know in the comments if you're watching on the replay or if you're in the live chat as well. Tell me which one of these drafts you actually like the most, because wildcard draft number 1 is probably the one that I would most likely lean to, but I'd be keen to see what you guys think as well. So let me know in the comments or in the chat as well. So I've got one more draft that I wanted to show. So this one actually, on reflection, looking at it now, is actually very similar to Wildcard draft number 1. Again, I think this is something I'd be very, very close to going with. The only real difference actually is that I've got Ramsdale instead of Raya, and I've got Douglas Luiz instead of Brownhill, although I probably would drop down to Brownhill, just create that extra 0.1, to be honest. But Alonso, yeah, I don't know, Alonso, like, I don't know if he's going to start on the weekend. It's really, yeah, I just don't know. It's a big risk, but God, he gives you so much upside. It could be really fun, and I think I would definitely advocate not just having Alonso. I think if you're having Alonso, make sure you've got a good safe Chelsea defender like Rudiger, because then if Alonso drops out, then you're not covering the Chelsea defense at all. So Wildcard draft number 4 is very similar to Wildcard draft number 1. I think the only difference is that we've gone with Raya instead of Ramsdale. Yeah, that's actually the only difference on reflection. So not too different to Wildcard draft number 1, but I really like it. I think the Grealish pick is something that I'm very, very keen and probably very close to doing as well on my own Wildcard draft. So I know this isn't technically Wildcard draft related, but I thought maybe it would be worthwhile to go through captaincy just for this specific game week, just to kind of do a quick overview of it. I think the best captain options are probably going to be Ronaldo, Lukaku, and Antonio. I've got Salah up here, but against Man City at home, I just don't know if I'd be going with Salah as a captain, to be honest. And I think the pick of the bunch is Lukaku for sure. Although I think Ronaldo is only just behind him in the pecking order. So I think everyone's got a lot of issues with defenders. I think this game week with Trent, Shaw, Ayling, etc. I think for that reason, I think if you've got other issues to sort out in your defense, and you have to, if it meant you had to take like an extra -4 to do Ronaldo to Lukaku, I just don't know if that's worth it. I think Ronaldo can get close to Lukaku, but obviously I would favour Lukaku because he's probably facing the best opponent in terms of his attacking potential because of the opponent's defense. If that makes any sense at all. You can see their expected goals conceded per 90. Southampton are 12th in the league, compared to Everton, who are second actually in the league, although it's worthwhile to note that Everton have had a very good run of fixtures to begin the season and they haven't really been tested too much. And then Antonio's got Brentford, who have been third in the league, although they did show a very open and attacking style against Liverpool. And so I think, there could be goals in it for Antonio. So I don't mind Antonio as a pick. I think I'm probably leaning towards Ronaldo in my own team, and I don't think I'm going to be making the switch to Lukaku just because I've got that issue of Trent in my team as well. So that was a little quick run through of captains as well for just this particular game week. And that's it. That's all I had planned. I just wanted to go through in this live stream just for about an hour. We've just ticked over an hour as well. I know at the beginning, I think there was going to be a lot of dead time of either me just looking at the screen, not doing anything, or you might not even be able to see me because my internet dropped out. But that's what I wanted to go through. I just wanted to go through the stats for all the positions, potentially talk through good picks on a wildcard or just good picks in general, and also, take any questions you guys have. So a few of you guys have come in with some questions, which is really good. Really happy to see you guys in the chat as well. Obviously, this is only like the second time I'm doing a live stream on this channel, but I think it's a nice way to go about it, see if you guys can get in the comments and ask questions directly. I'm always happy to answer the questions as well. So that's all I had planned for. If there's no other questions, hopefully you guys found some use out of that. Definitely give it a like as well. It really helps me on the YouTube algorithm. The YouTube algorithm does not like me at the moment. Apparently it doesn't want me to be producing FPL videos, so it's not pushing it out to the general populace. But obviously, if you guys really liked it, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing. If you found any use out of it as well, definitely let me know in the comments. I read all the comments as well. And let me know if you want a wildcard, if you got a wildcard draft, let me know and I'm happy to give feedback as well on it. Obviously you can see that there's a few players that I'm very keen on, so hopefully I won't be too biased as well. And Morgan's coming at the end with a nice NRL question, so not FPL related. Rabbitohs or Panthers in the grand final? If you're asking who I'd rather win, I'm a Roosters fan, so I'd rather the Panthers win. I don't really want the Rabbitohs to win. My gut is telling me that the Rabbits are going to win though, because they've got that extra week off, and Panthers have had 2 grueling matches, Parramatta and Storm. So I think my head says Rabbits. Wayne Bennett's also, it says he's just a master in grand finals. So I would say Rabbitohs my head says Rabbitohs, but I'd rather the Panthers win, but let's see. Again, Sunday evening, so that'll be really exciting. And then I don't know about any of you other guys if you're based in Australia or what other states in Australia, but we've got a public holiday on Monday, so perfect. We've got NRL Grand Finals Sunday evening, and then I think on midnight we've got a bunch of Premier League games, so it's a whole great night of sport coming up this Sunday. So yeah, very much looking forward to it. I probably won't post another team related video for FPL. What I'll do though is I'll post on Twitter. So I'll put my Twitter handle in the description below, and I'll post my final team there for this game week as well, so you can see what my kind of final transfers were. Likely it's going to be Trent for another Chelsea defender. But that's it for this, guys. I think we'll end it there. Thanks so much. As always, really appreciate a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Definitely give any other questions in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one.